First of all, before we go to the scene, let's take stock first to see if our things are complete. Many customers who are using this radar for the first time, you'll forget the pulse switch. You have to have this switch for it to work. You can switch to 100 meters or gigabyte, but it must have PoE power supply function. The voltage is around 48 volts, just some old versions. His PoE could be 1,000 volts. You can't bring it like that. Network cable needs attention. First, the network cable must be guaranteed to be of category 6 or above. Second, the length of the network cable cannot exceed 100 meters. If you have to go over 100 meters, then you find a way to transfer the signal to make it happen. Then we turn on the LiDAR. We mainly have two radars now. One is the ME. The interaction scope is relatively small. One is FE. The range is relatively large. When we open it, let's pay attention to counting the contents. ME is relatively simple, just a radar, nothing else. F1 has slightly more mounting plate and screws. If you open it and find that there is no installation board in it, then contact us. These are the two radars we mainly sell right now. It has a much larger scope, and it spins faster. The speed can be up to 30 RPM. The small radar range is for meters, then only 10 revolutions per minute at most. What's the difference between the speed? When the target you detect is moving fast, you need the rev fast radar. For example, when we hit the ball, you can only choose this radar. This little radar has a slightly faster ball speed. He can't detect it. Take a look at its interface. Just plug it into the network cable directly. This network cable both communicates and supplies power. And let's look at the orientation of this radar. This radar scans at 270 degrees. There's no signal at 90 degrees here. It's labeled here. This radar has a 360-degree scanning angle. Here are signals in all directions. However, when we deal with it on a daily basis, usually let the side with words. This side of the network port is facing away from the interaction area. And that's down there. And you can see the little arrow there. This little arrow is pointing towards the interaction area. So what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate how the radar connects. Radar and switch. It's fairly simple. Just connect him directly. The computer plugs it in. What about this time? We can see this radar light coming on. This means that it is powered on normally. Then we connect the computer and switch. The only thing to note here is that switch here has 1, 2, 3, 4 and uplink port. Let's not plug into uplink. Just plug in 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just a lot of laptops now. He made it small. Sure, the network interface card is saved. It doesn't come with a network interface card. Only wireless network interface card. Just buy an external network interface card like this yourself. Complete. We will receive such a document from the manufacturer. Bag. Try it on. This one, its English name online class assistant is called LiDAR scanner. When we load the file, try to keep it in the default file. Don't touch it. And after that, let's take a look at the desktop. A LED scanner icon will appear. This is the software when the radar is debugged and running. After the software is installed, we see these two icons. One is called server, one is called calibration. Calibration is when software is calibrated. Servo is the radar engine at runtime. Let's scan it with a LiDAR scanner first. Okay, we see this radar information. Its default IP address is this. Then we can modify it here. The suggestion is to use the default. The IP is often not available by default. Then we'll change it to what we need. Then we will use the default FPS for the port number. This M1 radar cannot be changed. FPS is the speed. Then another F1 radar can be changed. After the change, we will fill in and save the arithmetic here. For example, that's saved. We can open it and take a look again. Okay, we can see the change here. Click 0.8 and there's some more information down there. That MAC address, version serial number, radar model. This one we can see is the M1 radar. Then let's take a look at F1, the difference between this radar and the M1. Okay, we see this F1 radar. These are the IPs we swapped out, then the speed refers to the default. Then what about this port? Let's not try not to modify it. Unless, you're sure. Do you need to use a specific port? You can change it again. Its speed here can be changed. For example, I can change it to 20 revolutions per minute. Let's sweep it again. In addition, this IP modification is different. When he wants to modify his IP address, we need reassurance. The machine was first in the same IP segment as him, can be modified, and like M1 even if it is not on the same IP, but it can also be modified. There's actually a difference between the two. Another note is that this F1 MAC is 00. It's normal. Customers often say why this MAC is 00. This is normal. It can be used, no problem. What about after we set up the network? Open the calibration software. We start from the beginning. First add radar. If this is added, we need to delete it later. Just click delete here. Deleted it. What about after adding radar? Let's choose a scene. The three options are the wall, floor and tabletop. We choose a wall. Then we can see Chinese and English here. That is, if you need English, can be switched to English. Then this is the save configuration. If you have everything configured, you click to save the configuration. Open it later, which is the configuration you debugged before. Here, we can choose whatever model we are. Now the main ones are the M1 and F1. What else? And some are not on our radar. You can also use this software, but you need an authorized software from us. That authorization document is given to you before you can use it. There are some common radars on the market. Anyone can use this software. We won't introduce these today. Only introduce our own radar. We are now introducing the F1 model. Then we have the native IP. The IP is now 10.110. when it prompts you to choose the correct baud rate. Is it the baud rate? Instead, it says here that there are 4 installation angles on these 4 sides. You have to choose one. In fact, for the accuracy of debugging, you just need to choose one that is close to you. In addition, what about this dress and the reverse one? That means your radar is directly mounted on it. It's formal wear. What about reverse loading or flip loading? It's to make a stand. Put it upside down. It's called upside down. If you flip it, you choose inverted, usually formal clothes. Okay, even if the network debugging is normal here, able to communicate normally. And here's something to keep in mind. That is to say, sometimes we have multiple network interface cards. What about multiple network interface cards? Make sure your network interface cards are relevant. The network you set up is the relevant network interface card. And make sure it is in the same IP segment, preferably a network interface card with another. It is a separate IP segment. It will be better. And then when we install the radar, you need to look at the interface here to install it. Make sure our boundaries are clear. And it's interactive. There is a signal. And our car now looks diagonal. You may not be used to it. In fact, it has no effect on the debugging results. But we can get through this turntable. Let's put it where we can get used to it. Okay, you'll get used to it. Next, we're going to put the radar installed in the actual location. We set up the radar. What about when installing radar? It's best to fix it with screws. What about screw fixing? One is that it is more stable. The other thing is that it's easy to disassemble. Some people use glue. If the glue sticks, first, it is easy to have some displacement after a long time. The other is that it is difficult to dismantle the follow-up maintenance. What about when you install it? Let's roughly fix it first. Go to network settings, etc. This is all set up now, and then we look at the signal. You can now see his actual edges are roughly there. Like this is okay. If his edges are crooked, different from the actual situation, that is, it may be a little crooked. If it is crooked, it may not be unusable, as long as there is a signal in the interaction area. So what about after we pack it? First, go and touch his interaction area. Let's go around the edge of the interaction zone. How about this? We'll make sure it has a signal. Hold it in place. Then we continue to debug. It will prompt us every step of the way. Pay attention to its prompts. Here's the cue, I can see it, is. You want your radar fixed. Then scan the range to check. That's what we emphasized earlier. In this position, he has an exclamation point, yellow exclamation mark. Here he can pop up tutorials. Click this step. That is to say, tutorials will pop up here. What is the purpose of this step? Is to remove some background interference from it. We can see, here's a lot of background letter stuff. What about these background letters? Not the signal we want. You click background recognition. What happens after it's identified? Its background signal will be deducted later. It will not be treated as a signal. Then this step needs to be measured. We make sure there's nothing in the interactive space. If the interactive area is blocked, or if something is there, the result he caused was, there is no signal in the back piece. He has been deducted. So we must not have an interactive something area. Is blocking it. After this step we move on to the next step. This is the area calibration. Area calibration, we use a 4-point calibration method. After entering, you can see the red dot. Our default is generally to use the default point. But if we are not satisfied with the default point, we can still move it. In addition, we can scroll through the mouse wheel. You can zoom in and out of this box. Then you can click and drag this box. Usually we make it bigger. And what about this calibration point? We can move it according to our needs, because sometimes, areas we need, the area he projected, it's a little different. So maybe there are places where he has no signal, but it doesn't affect our use, because there was no interactivity there either. We need to move the dot. Move to where there is a signal. What about the 4-point calibration step? It is best to operate with 2 people. Go touch it alone. One person operates on the computer. Of course, if you don't have it on site, just one person, then you need to use a wireless mouse to operate. So here we see the first dot at the beginning, the dot on the upper left. So we're going to touch the spot. And then what happens? We can finish and exit. Then move on to the next step. The next step is define interactive areas. Interactive area, let's take a look at his options. First, rectangular area. Let's demonstrate. This draws a rectangle like this. One more click and he fixed the box. Then right click down and exit. Just make sure it's this box. What if you choose again? Is to redraw this interactive area. And I'm going to assume this is the center of the circle. Then we can draw a circle. Okay, the circle is now confirmed. So let's look at polygonal regions. Polygon means that I can connect infinitely with segments. That means I can take all kinds of alien shapes. I can do it this way, draw it roughly, because we don't have to be too precise when we draw our holes. It doesn't have to be exactly the same shape. So you can draw arbitrary shapes using this method if we are sure that the shape is drawn. Finish and exit. Okay, now we're done calibrating. You can click Save Configuration and exit. Fill in OK, then we're done calibrating. What about this time? We open R. This software is called a radar engine. What about this time? We can see radar is operating normally. So let's look at the interface of the engine, and it's basically divided into 2 boxes and 2 columns. If there are 2 columns, the first column is parameter related. The second column is the playlist. Let's first look at the parameter correlation. Let's look at the status bar about the first one. This shows the radar in action. If the radar is not working, then its state will be abnormal here. We can see it when we stop scanning. Scanning stops here. I continue to scan it. This shows if it's scanning. Then connect the state. In fact, it shows whether it is connected normally. In the network, if it is dropped, it will show that the connection failed. Calibration status. If it is displayed, it is not calibrated. That shows his state. Calibration status is lost. We have to figure out a way, or recalibration. Either put the calibration status at his previous backup. The following column is the interface settings. Interface settings. It's based on the 2-year protocol. And some of you might be using Windows more or less. So we look at. Some of you have a mouse simulation ticked off. What are you using? Just what do you tick? If you don't know which protocol is used for this, then we can test. Test one by one. At the beginning, just use the default 2-year to see if it works. If there is no response, use Windows more. Use the mouse to simulate before it responds. Advanced settings. Here is a simple sentence. Don't change it easily, unless you encounter some problems. Then contact us. We tell you how to change it. Other settings are introduced one by one here. The first is to hide or restore the mouse. And in some cases, it does. And then we have to hide it. We use the shortcut. Or just tick it. The second is to stop the scan with the ESC key. Sometimes we need to turn it off. What about after checking it like this? Press the ESC key to turn it off. This option is to ensure that we minimize. It can be minimized to the tray when starting. His minimized tray. He won't be in the way here. Minimize palette. It's often what we need. Just hope he's in the smallest tray. Then start the autoplay footage list. So here's what happens if I use this playlist. Then I hope that when my computer starts up, he can. Auto playlist. Sure, I ticked it. What if I didn't use this playlist? Playlist is empty. I just opened our footage. And then hooked up to this radar engine, so we don't have to turn it on. That means he has a delay in turning it on. Generally, we default to no less than 60 seconds. How about this? Everything you should load is basically loaded. It's less likely to appear. The problem with startup failure after booting. Here are a few options. One is to save the current settings. After I set this up, click him and save it. Another iterative test. Iterative testing function is a very useful function. When do we have a problem with the radar in any case? We'll test it interactively first. See what the signal looks like. Iterative testing. If it is normal here, that basically means there's not much of a problem with the radar. You have to find other reasons. Now the iterative test is open. Let's touch it and see. When our interaction test is normal, the location is also basically accurate. That means that the radar is basically fine. Stop scanning. This means that I'm the same as the ESC key above to stop scanning. But there is one advantage to this. That is, it can be restored. It can't be restored after you press the ESC key to stop. What about this stop scan? I clicked and it stopped. Then click again to restore it. Then it has a shortcut Shift+S. After we set up the radar, you can run the footage. Run the footage, it has two ways. One is that we run it directly on the computer, not through our radar engine. So let's go for a second. This is a software written by Unity. Then we open. This is direct to Playback. If you use our software to play it, we can take a look here. Also playlist. Here we can add footage. Okay, we've added the footage now. Look at his options. What can be changed here? One is material-driven events. This is Windows Go Point Replay. We just tried it. Tried it out. The other thing is airtime. We can change this according to our needs. Switching time. That is to say, switch between material and material. How long to give him? So since there is switching time, then there is a problem involved. It is to switch between multiple materials. Some customers are like small games. The same game would be boring. So we would probably be. There are many small games loaded in it, and they just keep switching back and forth. Okay, what about after we add it? You can play the file. It's the same as opening it yourself.